everybody. This is Tim Becherer, the editor-in-chief of Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine, and we're welcome to episode 2 of the Talking Heads. And with me, I've got my crazy cohorts here. We've got Kurt Cornwell out of Detroit, who is the MKG Detroit founder, as well as head instructor at Boombox, Kickboxing and Martial Arts. We have Mike Yuskiw, who is premier martial art instructor out of Georgia, but he lives in South Carolina. And we have Michael Perez out of Ohio, who is DNA Martial Arts founder. Welcome, guys, to the show.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Or welcome. Say we're off to go. So we are going to discuss a seminar survival guide today. But of course, we got to handle our legal stuff first. Let's turn it over to Mike Yuskiw to give that PSA / disclaimer /
All right, well, let's get this out of the way and we can get into the fun stuff. So let me just switch into our little bit serious mode here. And warning, training at seminars can cause the following symptoms: brain overload, happy confusion, exposure to new things, strange compulsions to study new things. Repeated seminar training could cause a long-term affliction known as cross-training. Cross-training could lead to a deep love or respect for different arts and styles, and could even lead to certification and teaching of said styles. The Talking Heads podcast is a strong medication that can lead to a more open mind, a more humble attitude, and a more chilled-out personality. The manufacturers of this medication advise that the podcast should always be taken with a dose of self-deprecation and humor. When it is not, side effects can occur. Those side effects can include vomiting from your eyes, quick responses to personal infallibility, rectal pain, or the coming of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. If any of these symptoms appear, immediately contact your Chinese or your herbal doctor, your bartender, or perhaps your mommy for care. Do not take seminars if you're allergic to seminars. Consult your doctor before beginning this or any program. Results may vary. Take charge of your seminar training with Melmag.
All right, I think we're all safe to go.
Oh my god, I could ride a horse again.
Did we cover? I think we covered the bases. I don't know if we have to talk to legal, but just to make sure we covered our bases. And I appreciate the few minutes that you guys gave me. And now we can move on. Thank you, Tim.
That's amazing.
Of course. All right, guys. So let's talk about seminars. This is something that we all do, and I think not only go to them, but Kurt, you've got some experience with putting them out there. So I think we can actually talk about not only attending them, but hosting them as well. So do you guys want to start with the hosting, or do you want to start with the going to?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't hosted, so that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I feel like, let's talk. I think jump into, Tim, you getting us going on attending seminars. And I offer for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's the most relatable thing. I think a lot of us, particularly in your listener section, regularly attend seminars. You also happen to be a teacher and student at the Inasano Academy and one of Gruden's occasional training partners. And I think he's not only, is the person who kind of started the seminar phenomenon or whatever, but is the most well-known. So I think it's a great place to jump into it if y'all are okay with it.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. Yeah. It's interesting you say that. And I don't want to really give an unofficial history because I haven't really done the hardcore research, but
please do.
Is that this thing, like you said, I think it did kind of start with Guru Dan. I think in the late 70s, we were kind of looking at a thing called the Aspen Academy or the Aspen Camps or something like that, which was a big summer camp in Aspen, Colorado. This was not something that Guru Dan put together, but he was part of it. And that particular thing, I think, had a lot of different arts in it. I mean, my first instructor in JKD College, this is where he studied with Guru Dan. So when I can finally get him on my podcast, we can talk the Martial Art Lifestyle podcast. Anyway, we can talk about that. And then John Maidmont at the Academy also studied at that. And I think there was like ninjutsu, and I think there was Farang Do, and I think there was just all kinds of stuff. I don't know what the whole lineup was, but it sounded like this was this incredible thing that was done. So I don't know if it was the first of its kind, but certainly I think it was the beginning of things taking off. And then I think you guys all probably remember looking in martial art magazines and see the advertisements for CMA which was another big thing early 1980s.
Mhm.
I
And
was gonna say,
yeah,
looking through and going, I want to go to that. Of course, you couldn't go to it because you're like 10, you know.
right.
Yeah, I think Rick Fay, who's my teacher, was at the Aspen one. We really came up hearing so much about the Great Smoky Mountain camps that were very similar. You know, a lot of these had Gurdan, had Larry Hartzell before our time, but you know, I think Stephen Hayes was at some of these, all
Right.
different, very eclectic. William Chung, really eclectic teachers. And then I know Gurdan eventually had really long form camps in California that were like 8-week camps, like really
Right.
long form training things, where you're kind of packing up and moving out there for a while, which is pretty cool. Very immersive
Wow.
experiences. So it's
Wow.
what a way to change the world of martial art in the sense of, you know, we're going to bring it to you. That's what Rick always talks about, Guru Dan, in the sense of like, here's Michael Jordan is going to show up in your little town and teach you to play basketball, right? Like it's a really phenomenal thing that doesn't exist in other arts or sports or whatever. And to have these huge camps where all these people come together and kind of cross pollinate, dare I say cross train, right? Offer their input and all this different stuff and really let you have that truly immersive experience. It's pretty cool. I don't know to what degree that had been done, but maybe 500 some years prior had really been done in any contemporary sense. And in some way, the Zoom phenomenon and the online thing that we see now is like the next iteration of that, right? The next evolution of that, really sort of changing the zeitgeist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty neat because now there's such a variety. Like, you know, like you kind of mentioned, some of those early camps were really neat because you had this like crazy variety. You know, you had like Guru Dan teaching Kali, and then like you'd have like Hartzell or Tackett doing JKD, and then you have like Stephen Hayes doing ninjutsu, and Bill Wallace doing kicking, and you know, all kinds of people. So it's like you'd have almost A to Z in the alphabet of martial arts in one. And I don't think we generally see that much of that kind of variety anymore, but we see more seminars out there in just about everything, individual anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
the MKG used to have one that I feel like was one of the last true holdouts. I think the CSW conferences are still kind of a melting pot with a
Right,
lot of big name people. The Legend Seminar certainly could be another example of that.
right.
MKG had the what we call the Wisconsin camp, and that since has now moved to Minnesota, but the Wisconsin camp was done in Lake Owen, Wisconsin for at least 10 years. But that was an outgrowth of the Michigan camp, which was an 80s camp that was started by Guru Dan, if I remember correctly, but was really spearheaded by Pete Hetrick, right? And so here in Michigan, we've been talking about wanting to bring back, I love that, you know, 80s, 90s stuff to me, is that early 90s, late 70s, early 90s, that golden era, wanting to bring back some of those things, bring back the Michigan camp,
Oh,
which Pete Hetrick was nice enough to give me his blessing, be like, yeah, if anyone's going to do it, you should do it. But you're crazy if you do it. It's a terrible idea. Don't. I was like, well, thanks. You know?
talked about that, and I'm all for helping you out with that because I think that's I don't know, I think it's I'd love to set some of that up, and realistically, even there's a possibility of something of doing something or a great venue down in the Quad City area of Illinois and Iowa that I grew up in. There's a guy that's sort of taking over for the instructor of mine that had passed away recently, and he's a security guy at this thing called the Rust Belt, and the Rust Belt used to be a car factory. Now, I never knew we did cars in the Quad Cities. I know we did tractors, but I didn't realize that we did cars. And so they've completely renovated this thing now. There's like offices and restaurants, and it's a concert venue. So it's got this stage and this really cool thing. And he was talking about trying to make that a venue for me coming there and doing something. And I'm like, well, that's a big venue. And I would love to tell you I can draw that many people. But if we did a larger camp like that, and it may be a situation I'm familiar with the area, I've been in it, but I haven't really gone in and like studied the stage and stuff. But it may be one of those things where people can see, and then there's all these monitors up too, almost like a concert event, so people could see things on a big screen as well. So, you know, something to talk about there as far as
Yeah,
like
I think all of us right now and whoever's watching or listening are privy to a tangent that has just turned into the birth of the Malmag annual training conference. You know?
yeah, there you go.
Just right now, that just
Yeah,
gave
just
birth to
happened right
that
there,
right now.
folks. Yeah,
No, I think
this
we
one.
felt it happening and we just let it happen, right? We just let that happen there. That's how that works.
Let nature
Uh,
take its course. Just
That's right.
push, just push.
that's right. That's right. So guys, I guess, let's talk about going to seminars, like a survival guide for people that are going. Maybe let's talk about people that have never gone, people that are regulars. Let's talk about maybe just throwing out some ideas here real quick. Going to a seminar of something you've never done, you don't have a lot of experience with. Going to seminars of things you do know something about. All ideas out there.
That's
So
how I thought about it. Almost like beginner, intermediate, and advanced,
sure.
right? So if you have a beginner, and this fits into the way that you talked about, maybe it's a beginner in that art. So it's very interesting to think about like taking notes, knowing something about even whatever you can know about the art. So if you're a beginner, it can maybe just be very basic. Like, do I need focus mitts? Is it going to be a sticks, right? You got to know a few basics, right? You should even simple things like if you know someone in the seminar, or if you can, when you get there, strange things like where you put your stuff can actually be very important if you're a rank beginner. Because you go in and you go, imagine if you don't have a training partner, right? You go in, you're like, okay, who kind of knows, look like they know what they're doing. Maybe you introduce yourself to the some of the people that actually are hosting the seminar, right? You may put your stuff down next to people that look like they know people that are hosting the seminar. They look like they're instructors. Maybe someone social, and you can, hey, by the way, how does this drill go? Because you have to have notes, and you have to go, what are they doing now? And you have to have people next to you to go, hey, by the way, am I doing it right, or what's that variation? So I definitely think there's a lot of simple things people take for granted, like putting your stuff down in a certain place in the room. So, what do you guys think about, what's your take on some of that?
Yeah, I think like kind of what you're talking about is what like what I wrote down was three categories or what to prepare for, like mentally, physically, whatever. It's if you've never been, what to bring, and then how to not be that guy, right? As far as like falling into the traps or whatever of, and I think that'll be kind of a fun thing for you to finish with. But what to prepare for. I wouldn't have thought of where to put your stuff. And this is a great conversation already because that's a really important point, right? Like, so I guess generally speaking, what came to me of what to prepare for or what to expect ahead of time is particularly in a seminar of somebody using Guru Asano as an example, is the kind of fatigue that you're going to experience, right? Everything is going to be super fast. We always use the expression, I think we all do, like you're standing in front of a fire hose with a little Dixie cup, right? You're not going to get a full drink. Just be glad you got wet,
I
right?
knew the fire hose was coming. I knew the
Yeah,
fire hose. I'm so glad you
that's what
said
it
it.
is. And every time you go, your cup gets a little bigger. You're able to drink a little bit more, that kind of thing. And you're just grateful that you got splashed with the water, man. Like that's about it. Prepared for potentially a lot of storytelling. I've spoken to people that have spent years and years and years going to seminars who I've heard say things like, at this point, I just don't want to pay the money to listen to someone tell stories. Respect to them, to whoever those individuals are, if they don't want to do that. I think that's a colossal mistake personally.
Mhm.
I think most of the wisdom gets transmitted to us via the stories. So be prepared for that. Those will be our opportunity to take a break, to hydrate, to take a seat. Um, the mental fatigue may not hit you as quick as the physical fatigue, but it's going to probably be worse depending on your type of seminar. I think for me, at least, the mental fatigue is the thing that taxes me the most. And hydration will get in front of both of those things, right? We tend to forget, we equate hydration, make sure you're drinking enough water, to physical fatigue or breakdown, but it's really the mental fog
Right.
that's affected by that. So making sure, if you're somebody who doesn't drink water when you train for a seminar, you need to be the person who does. If you're somebody who drinks a bottle of water when you train for the seminar, get one of those gallon jugs or whatever, up
Mhm.
your quantity quite a bit, I think is a significant thing. Bringing snacks or whatever, and be prepared to take notes. Eventually, if you're new to seminars, note taking is something you might be prepared to do. And then you'll get there and you'll go, I've never really done this before. How the hell do I write this down? Right. Short of drawing pictures of what I'm seeing, the shorthand you'll develop will be yours uniquely and it will come with time. In the beginning, write down whatever you can. And again, we'll just be grateful that you get that much information to work on. At the next one, you'll add more to it and more to it, and cumulatively, you'll wind up with something really great.
I have notes on taking notes.
Nice. Nice.
Perez,
that shorthand thing is a great idea, because I remember my first seminar trying to write everything down word for word. Huge mistake, because it's hard to keep up. So, you have to learn how to abbreviate certain things, or just, use certain letters for certain things to describe, like a round kick, RK, or, if it's a left round kick, LRK. But, certain things like that have helped me immensely as seminars have gone on, the more I attend, to help me to take notes a lot quicker and try not to miss the finer details. And the storytelling, I completely agree, because, I think it helps with learning a little bit. You might get some story, and then that has to relate to the technique. And then later on, after the seminar, you might have forgotten about it. You didn't write anything down, and you just relied on your memory. And then you think of the story, and it's like, oh, that's right. Now I can equate it to that because I remember the story.
That's interesting. That's a really good point. Yeah. And I think the shorthand thing too, like a hack for this, apart from the storytelling, one of my favorite parts of seminars is the lunch break. And now that makes me sound lazy. I probably am, but it's because I get to see all you guys, right? So the lunch break is because we actually get to socialize. It's, you develop friendships through seminars with people that live in other parts of the world or country. You don't get to see them elsewhere. So the lunch breaks are kind of a sacred time. But as a beginner, I would suggest, at least if it's a 2-day thing, take that first day. If there's a break or a full meal break, plan to do that on site, bring a bag lunch or whatever, and go over your notes, ask questions of whoever else happens to be doing lunch on site. Because the key to shorthand is consistency. If you're making up your shorthand on the day, utilize some time during your break to write a key for what your shorthand is, right? Yeah. So LK is going to mean left kick, but or RK is going to mean right kick. Maybe in another context, you're using it for round kick. Well, damn, now it's going to be confusing, right? So utilize that break time to write a little map for yourself, explaining what your shorthand is. And again, over time, you'll also find too, if you go to 3 seminars, you might have a couple times where there's some series that repeat themselves, but there's a little bit of this technique added to it, or this bit is different. Now you don't have to write down every single part of the series. You're just writing Karasok series and then whatever was a little bit different. Okay?
I was going to get to that point too. Yes.
Yeah, that kind of becomes
as a beginner
process.
100%. I love this. So as I was definitely thinking about some of these notes. I put some of this in my notes about notes. Like as a beginner, just like you guys were saying, if you haven't really gone to a seminar, or if you're going to an art where it's your first time, you can do some background knowledge. You can look up the art online. You can kind of see who's going to be there. You can try to reach out and see, do I know anyone who's going to be there, right? But ultimately, you got to go in like you're talking about. It's possible you're not going to get much. Your note taking is going to evolve throughout the seminar. Like as you're going, like, whoa, this wasn't what I thought. Now I have to change how the key, etc. So you may go in thinking, okay, each section, each time the instructor breaks, I just have to write something generally about that section. Something. This was an armbar. This was a boxing technique. Like that's all you might get. And you might look back at your notes and be like, I have no idea what I was talking about. That's okay in the first seminar. That's okay. You don't expect to get 30, 40% in the first seminar. You might not even get 10, right? Intermediate people, just like you're saying, or if you're an intermediate, sort of if your skills going to a seminar are at an intermediate level. Because one could argue going to a seminar is almost its own type of skill. Like imagine business seminars or Tony Robbins or these different, like as a personal trainer, we would take the certifications almost in seminar form where you go in for like 8 hours, 2 days, and then you test. So it's almost a different skill to go in and learn in this format, right? So as an intermediate, just like you were just saying, Kurt, you can go in and say, okay, he's breaking. okay, I've got this section now. Now we're in single stick. We're in single stick sombrata. Now we're doing this mid-range stuff. Good. I've got that. Boom. Mid-range sombrata section. And then you're looking at the variations, right? Mike Krivka would always joke when you come back from lunch that give him coffee because he would always say, okay, you only can teach three techniques. And he'd bring up quantum learning. You're only supposed to, Mike Krivka gave me this book. You're only supposed to teach 3 techniques. He'd always say that at the East Coast seminars because, those guys were there. You can't teach more than 3 techniques. But then there's 5 variations of the 3. So then you're like, whoa, that's 12. And then he's like, okay, that's 5 minutes. Can you guys get this far? And everybody's like, I have no idea what we're doing. So when you write those notes down, there's one section, we have 5 minutes. I have to write something about that. At an intermediate level, you have a little bit more structure, right? At an advanced level, now you already have a lot of the drill. You're helping other people, and you're trying to see, is there some variation we're pulling out from years ago? Is there something that flows from something else, right? So the level that you're doing it is different. In the beginning, you're just like, can I get the basic, is it jab, cross, hook? I'm just going to do jab, cross, hook. And you can't do anything more than that, right? So all of that is going to evolve over time too. You guys want to piggyback off of that?
Well, I was thinking, so there's a lot there. What do you guys think about, just kind of on the notes thing, a strategy I used to use in college, which was rewrite your notes. Your notes that you're taking are a scramble, and like you said, a shorthand. They're not full thoughts. They make sense to you at that time as you're quickly trying to get some information down. And I've always thought, man, you need to go redo these notes soon after you took them, but not like immediately right away, but say in the hotel that night or within a day or 2, and rewrite the notes in longhand and thoughts at that point in a more coherent fashion. What do you guys think about that strategy?
I think it's brilliant. And the
Yeah.
thing that you're up against is what Kurt was talking about, where your mind is already fried, right? Because you get through and you're like, oh my God, especially doing empty hand first and weapons, where you're so tired, and then you do the weapons that fries your brain. Like you're like, I just want to eat and go to sleep. So even though you're right, it's an uphill struggle to be that mentally tired and have to rewrite the notes. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think I don't know. I was a bad student in school, so clearly I should have been rewriting notes.
Which
Tim,
is hilarious because you're one of the smartest guys I know, but that's atypical.
Yeah.
No, I learned to hustle and sound smarter than I am. No, but I'm going to start doing note rewrites, kind of effective immediately. And I assume, to your point, Mike Yuskiw, that you're going to perhaps trigger things when you're rewriting, right? So the process of rewriting is going to have you go, oh, wait a minute, that's where he did blah, 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 or that's where we worked on this. I forgot to write that down, but now I remembered it because I'm in the process of rewriting it. The process of re-engaging with information sometimes can kind of put you into that space that you were in before. And to your point, Mike Perez, is the storytelling. One of the biggest things at this point for me that I take notes on are the stories. And 100% I agree with you, is those stories, when I go back and reread that stuff out of interest and passion for the hobby of it, it transports me into being back in the gymnasium at that time period. And now I can remember all the stuff that we did around it, right? So I think you're right. I think re-engaging with the material will help you kind of almost in a hypnotic kind of way, not to be too weird about it, get back into that headspace and hopefully let you sidestep some of the fatigue, at least for a little bit, while you're going, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this now and write down whatever I can. And then, I'm probably going to crash out immediately after.
Yeah. It's trying to find ways that reinvigorate that passion that brought you there in the first place, little things that you can use to connect to that stuff to help you remember easier. I just found it a little easier to just use those little blocks to help connect things that'll help you remember. Like one of the things that I try to do is, when it comes to the variations that we learn, is try to figure out where the prefix is or the suffix is, where the change is in those. So when we're learning those, then it's like, oh, okay, it's this, and this, and the change is at the prefix. Or no, it's towards the end. So then the beginning of it stays the same. And it kind of reminds me of something that I had found out that Guru likes to do, where when he teaches, it's entry, follow-up, and finish. And then you have the variations for each one, where the entry might be the same, the follow-up might be different, the finish might be different. Or when you think of that pattern, anywhere in there, it can change. But as long as you understand that pattern with it, then you can figure out the flow of it and where the change is in that.
It's almost like grammar, and you're even
Yeah.
doing this with your hands.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's almost like how you would take notes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Well-
grammar. You're literally diagramming the technique in the air for us. That's brilliant.
Yes.
That's the way I take notes too. That I think
like
we
to
all
offer-
do that to some extent, right?
I'd like to offer too with that, Mike, is that like, you know, what you're talking about is like the constant, right? A lot of times, you know, if there's a good teacher, like you're in Asano, they're giving you a constant and then there's variables, right?
Yeah.
The constant, let's say, is the entry. So you're going to do like a pendulum kick into a lead hand or a pocket, whatever it is. And then we're running some sort of list after that. So you can shorthand that constant, or maybe you're at a point where you don't even need to shorthand it. You just know that that's the constant.
Right.
And taking is on the variables. But to that end, if you're a beginner student, it might be that most of your time in note taking while this little thing is happening, you know how Gurdan is like, okay, I'm going to give you a long round for this 2.5 minutes, and then we're moving on. You're like, what? You know,
Yeah.
maybe your whole round is all you got was the constant and one variable. But I'd like to offer that if you're a beginner student, that's all you need. That's perfect, right? You know what I mean? Like, try not to fall into the trap of wanting to write down, to keep, to retain, to further train all of the information. The large volume, the large sum of data that you're being given might be, in fact, for the seasoned instructors that are in the room, because they're cross-referencing their own curriculum. It might not even be that they're going to train it. It might be that they need to utilize this for something different that you can't even think about right now as a beginner, because they're working on projects that are just kind of outside of your sphere of what you're working on, what you're thinking about for the art, right? So, you know, sometimes you've got a teacher that's going, hey, I'm going to give you this list of 2 variables specifically because it's different than the list I know you guys have. And I want you to just recognize the differences, and maybe that will influence your own curriculum in some way. And so if all you get is 1 to 3 things, that means you're at a level right now where you're working on 1 to 3 things. And that's fantastic. That's amazing. That doesn't mean you're less than, or you should strive to get the other things. Focus on the things you get and be grateful that you're getting them, and go from there. Bit by bit, you add to it. But I think a lot of people, I've observed this, and I maybe have been guilty of it too. I don't know. They go to seminars and they're looking for like as much, I don't want to say greed, but there is this kind of like, I want all of it to bring it home, and fall into this trap of as if they're going to teach it to somebody. You don't need to worry about that, especially if you don't run a school or a program. Just train. You know? So if all you get is 2 things, that's 2 great things for you to train. Why do you need 30 if you're
Turn into a technique dragon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heard this,
Otherwise,
you
we're
heard this
just
term like
collecting
a bookworm reads them, but a book dragon doesn't read them. They just collect them.
They collect
like
them.
smog. So if you're in
Right.
seminars, if you go to seminars a lot, you can turn into a technique dragon where you just want to accumulate a ton of, I just want a different instructor who's giving me fancy techniques, right? So you can kind of turn into that. And if you try to write down everything when you're not training it, like if you don't go back and look at those notes, you didn't really get reps in when you were there. You may write down, like, you know, enough to write down, okay, this is this series, here's the 5 variations, okay, time, okay, good, what's the next thing? But it's better, just like you're saying, Kurt, this is kind of what we were saying. If you're a beginner, every time they go time and they meet again, you're like, what is this? Just like you were saying, if you have 1 variation, next time you go back to it, you're like, okay, I've got that 1 variation, and you build on something else that's related, and everything connects, right? So,
And
yeah, all you need to do
oftentimes,
is,
by the way, the most profound lesson comes from in recognizing there is a variation. You don't need 20 versions of that to get that lesson. It's in recognizing, oh, sometimes the thing is a different thing. That's the only lesson that you needed, right? To not think that everything is fixed and set in stone, you know. And we all know people, to your point, who or have met people, come across people that are kind of like list collectors, right? They go to a lot of seminars and they just collect these lists, and they're really good at having or keeping or memorizing the lists. I mean, I've had conversations with people where they'll tell me to my face, like, you're doing that in the wrong order. That's not how the list. Like,
Right.
what are we talking about?
they're good to
here?
have
You know?
around, because I'll pick their
Yeah.
brain too, right? Okay, well, give me the list again, and I'll, you remember this
Yeah.
other one? Okay, well,
Those
tell me
are
this
great
other one.
people to
They're
have
great to have
access.
around, though, right?
Yes,
Those are- yeah,
but
those are-
unless you're your
something.
whole like aspiration in the art is to be an archivist. You know what I mean? Unless that's your whole goal, you're probably selling yourself short, right? You managed to curate this big book of lists, but you don't really know any of them, right? You know them here, but you don't know them here, right? You can't really
Yeah.
anybody do it. You can't really execute it. So now you're just a guy who has a really cool collection of lists. And so the people who are teaching and training can benefit from knowing you. But I almost feel bad for that person because you probably could have gotten that much more out of it.
Yeah. Well, they're very useful. If you ever get mugged and you have the list guy with you, he can tell you the mugger, you're doing the mugging in the wrong order. And hopefully that'll frustrate him enough to where he'll run away.
I always
have a
tell my students
confession.
that when they're like, oh, I accidentally did jab instead of cross them, if the guy that you're defending yourself against isn't like, well, technically you punched me right the wrong way.
I have a confession to make. When I was training shoot lock flows, I felt that tendency to become a list guy.
Okay. Well, you're talking about a Japanese art, right? So yeah, there's a strictness of the list, but these things are only tools, and if we
Yes.
think so, like we're talking about sort of like 3 different levels here: beginner, intermediate, advanced. And that's the reason why these seminars kind of have stuff that's all over the place, is because you have all those mixed into one room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as a beginner, you're looking for foundation, you're looking for fundamental. That should be your goal, right? Where you're there. Don't worry about extemporary. What's the word I'm looking for? Extemporary.
Extemporaneous?
Yeah,
Ancillary?
Details. So you're not
Extra.
looking at all that stuff because that's too much, right? So you want foundation. What's the basic? What's the prefix, as Michael is talking about in a drill? Or maybe even the suffix is important. If we're looking at some of these coordination drills, say from double stick, maybe the suffix, which is an umbrella 3, is the important thing to get down. Then understand, okay, there's different prefixes to it. Maybe the prefix is always a jab. The suffix is something else: cross, uppercut, hook, round kick, whatever. So, you figure out for yourself one parts of that structure. Look at that structure, get that part down. Intermediate, I think it's time to start looking at details a little bit. Not go super crazy, but some more details. Is there variations? Advanced, you're looking for connections. Connections are very important for you at that time, I think, for the advanced.
I would wholeheartedly agree on all 3 of those, and especially connections. And I also like to add, particularly in the advanced level, and if you're a teacher in any capacity, starting to look at and try to understand how and why that person is teaching the way that they are.
Right.
Not just what are they teaching, but how are they teaching it and why are they teaching it that way? If you have an opportunity in a responsible way without being that guy to actually ask the person why they're teaching it in that way, or to ask somebody else who knows them, those to me are some of the real pieces of gold. And for the anyone who's listening who hasn't been to many or any seminars, I don't want to blow up anybody's spot, so I won't name any seminar teachers, but I know I've been taught as somebody who's taught some seminars that teaching, particularly in a seminar format, a lot of times what you're doing is disguising reps, right? And we do this in regular classes too. So it's important to remember that if all you got in your notes or in your body was the constant, there's a good chance that that's the lesson that they wanted you to get, right? So you have a piece of footwork, you're doing, some sort of push step into I said before, pendulum kick. So pendulum kick into lead hand, cross across, pendulum kick into rear kick, cross across, pendulum kick into this, into that, into that, and that. And you're like, there's 30 different things he did after the pendulum kick.
It's always a
I only
pendulum
got
kick.
2 of them. Like, what he wanted you to get was the pendulum kick. And if he said for 3 hours today, we're doing pendulum kick, you're going to be bored or frustrated or whatever. So a lot of times that other stuff is the window dressing. If you know Mal Morney, he's one of the only people I've ever seen just be overt with that. And if you've ever been to one of his seminars, you'll hear him tell you flat out, this is not the art. This is the fancy stuff I'm doing because it's what you want me to do. I'm trying to make sure you stay engaged, and it's all the crap you want me to do that you saw on YouTube, so I'm going to do it for you. But remember that thing we did in the beginning where we're working the structure and you guys started getting bored? That's the art. That's actually the thing I need you to do, right? So peeking behind the curtain a little bit, again, try not to feel frustrated if all you got was the first 1 or 2 things, the suffix or the prefix or what have you. because there's a good chance that that actually is the lesson. And from there, if you want to add stuff to it, add whatever you know, add whatever you want. It don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think with the variations, really, it's just teaching you different ways that you can adapt. The variations are just showing you adaptations. That's all. But like you said, as long as you can get the prefix or the suffix, you understand what the solid part of it is, then you can expand on that as much as you want with anything. You know, it's just, we're just giving these different variations as this core to show you the core elements of it to, oh, okay, well, if I can do that, I can also do this.
Sure.
Sometimes it's not even variation. Sometimes it's like, okay, there's 3 different defenses to a cross. And then in the next series, it's like 5 different defenses to a hook. But it's really 7 and like 10. And then there's, 3 different defenses to a front kick and then other defenses to a cross. So sometimes it's not even the variations. It's that out of those 5 defenses to a hook, I'm just going to get 2. I'm not going to get all 5. Right? You guys are talking about not only do you have the 5, but you have variations of the first 4, and then the last one has like these 3 things from some other art that they haven't taught in 2 decades, and then some others are like, oh, he hasn't taught this series since da 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 da. So like you're like, wait, what? No, just do your thing, just calm down, right? So there's different levels to the stuff, right? So yeah, I definitely think some of it isn't even the variations. It's like just get one variation of the one thing, not even right?
Yeah.
Multiple, I got the shoulder roll. I didn't get the bob and weave. I didn't get the split. I didn't get anything else. I just got the shoulder roll. Now I'm going into the cover and hit against the hook. I didn't get the bob and weave on that side. I didn't get this other thing, right? You just got one thing. That's okay. Next time you go back to it, you're like, this is the 1-3 series. This is the 1-2 series. I have one of each. Now I can add the second or the third. And that's how they build, right?
And arguably a good teacher is going to know that you're going to get the shoulder roll options. I'm going to get the slip options. Tim is going to get the split options. So that good teacher has to show all of that because each one of us is going to remember different things based on our tendencies, our exposure, whatever,
Right.
So because everybody is different, a good seminar teacher has to go, okay, I've got whether it's 20 or 200 people in this room. I have to do a real wide spray of data because everyone is naturally going to grab whatever their brain is going to gravitate towards. And if it's specific to linear, everybody else is kind of left out. There's a handful of people that go, that was perfect for me. And everyone else is going, I felt like I didn't get anything.
Right.
So Kurt, I think you just discussed an amazing strategy right there, which is team up. Get together with other people, and then you can go, I'll memorize number 1. You memorize number 2. You memorize number 3. You memorize number 4. Because I think what happens when we get to seminars, sometimes we think of ourselves, especially, well, one of my first strategies is take a partner. See if you can always go with somebody. We can't always do that, but try to. And then if you, at least there's 2 of you, but get with another 2 people or get with another 3 or 4 people and come to that agreement. Like, hey, we're all going to sit here and watch this. You get the first one. I'll get the second one. This guy will get the third, get the fourth, and we'll do our notes together on this.
Yeah.
And you'll cover more detail.
It also, with the way I think of it is, you have to be honest with your level. Because you get some people that come there and they just want to act like they're in a more advanced level than they are and want to try and get all the information they can, and then they just end up confused. You have to really be honest with where you're at in order to, accept that, to know what you're able to pick up, what you're learning, what you're able to learn, and then be able to ask the questions of the right people.
Yeah, I agreed 100%. And I think, Tim, that the idea of coming in with a partner or developing a group or coming in with a group, that probably could have been the first piece of advice we give. That's super important, I know for me now, because I'm going to see Gurdan in Minneapolis at the end of June, but it's also a reunion for me and a bunch of other MKG people. This will be the first time that for at least part of it, my wife and I will get to train together, the first time in a lot of years. We'll get to train together at one of these seminars. But I also have Steph Ruby and calling some of these people that are my regular training partners when I go to these events. So we're going to do a group, right? And so there's going to be what we do at this point, 4 or 5, 6 of us, where we all kind of at least are in the same area. and we're taking notes, and you kind of check, did he do that? I felt like he did it. I never seen him do that before. Okay, and
Right.
you're kind of, you're almost gossiping about the content together because you're like, oh, this is
Right.
cool, man, and trying to figure it out, bouncing things off of each other. If you can come in with somebody that you feel like you move well with, that you have good rapport with, and you can kind of jam out that way, that's a huge thing. I know Mike Perez, you were just here to see Rick Fay, last weekend.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times it's you, it's Nick Catalino, it's Brett, it's these guys that, you've known for a long time, and everybody kind of trains together, and watching that happen from the other side of the mat, like that's the recipe right there. My students, some of whom were meeting Rick for the first time, were off in the corner working together, and that also, by the way, as the seminar instructor or an assistant to the seminar instructor, when you're in groups, it also allows those people to come over and help you, because they can come over to your group of 2 to 4 to 6, 8 people and go, how are you guys doing? Are you getting this? Right. And then they can kind of show all of you. They can't do that if there's 100 people there and they have to individually
Go
check
to
on
50.
each person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they're in
Point.
clumps of 5, everybody's going to probably get a little bit of ratcheted up support.
Yeah.
I used to get that too.
Another point when it comes to seminars is people, when you recognize your level, if you are a little more advanced, helping those who aren't, going,
Okay.
when you see that they are having difficulty, and say, oh,
Yeah.
hey, let me walk over here and give you, are you guys, do you need any assistance? Are you having any trouble? Is there something about that you're not getting? What can I help you with? Getting help from those people that are a little more advanced than you.
Because we're talking about, seminar is a very expensive thing. And so I think there's a line here, and I think here's a really good conversation to have. So one, I feel, and I'm this guy, as you guys know, when you come, I'm the guy that goes around and helps, because that's my role. That John Maidmont's the same way. So I think those who are giving a seminar should have some people that are designated, comp them out, let them be there or whatever, so they can go and help. Because what I'm getting to the crux here of the conversation, which is, what is the responsibility of, okay, you've got the guy who's come by himself. We all know this guy. He doesn't know anything. Absolute rank beginner. Of course, their desire is, I need to find someone who knows all of this. Now you've got a situation where the guy who paid $450 for this thing is now teaching a rank beginner. They are going to possibly be upset, and I don't disagree with them there. So how do we deal with this situation?
Yeah, well, and I think you started
what's
by answering it, because
what's
that's
everyone's responsibility in your guys' opinions here?
I mean, it's a legitimate problem, right? I think we've all been to seminars where, like Steph, I mentioned before, was my seminar training partner for a long time. And then I remember one time, I don't know, I went to the restroom, I took a break or something. I came back and he was training with somebody else, and a brand new person was like, oh, good, will you help me? Which I'm happy, of course I want to do. But the whole rest of the event now, I just got pushed into switching training partners, and the entire dynamic has changed, right? And the entire, I don't know, value package or whatever. It's like the whole experience has changed. A lot of these things do take a lot of financial commitment, time away from families. So having one person inadvertently be put into a position where they have to teach their training partner is unfair. If you have a team of people that are roving and also getting their reps together, I think that's a far better recipe for success. I haven't even heard of that or thought of that. And I think you're absolutely right. It'll kind of help negate that. If somebody's going, hey, they need help, cool, that's my role. I'm going to come around and help them. Also, provided that you are actually somebody who can or is empowered to help. Because nobody wants the list of don't be that guy, the guy who thinks that they can be the teacher that goes around and helps everybody out.
Yeah, because you do have that guy.
Like this is your seminar, dude. What are you doing?
Right. They're running around trying to help people, and they don't know what the hell they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or worse, I was talking about where you put your stuff. Because if you actually know, like, for example, you can see, if you know something about the people going, or the different schools, maybe the host, something. And when you put your stuff down, you go, okay, these guys are from this school. They always, like, I actually used to see David Hatch. I used to see the Hatches everywhere. Everywhere I would go, the Hatches would be at the seminar. Everywhere we would go. Now, thankfully, I was always with like a group of Mike Krivka students. So we always had either Mike Krivka with us or a few different people. So almost every seminar I went to, I had people with me to train with, right?
Mhm.
But you always knew, okay, Hatches are over there, right? You'd see like if I was in sort of the New England part, then you'd see like a bunch of like New Breed shirts. You're like, man, they're hot on the scene, so they know all the Inosanto stuff. So you'd know like if you're going to Inosanto seminars, these are the good guys. Now, if you're with a bunch of people that know and you're with someone that don't, because that would happen too, you'd make sure that you could float around and you wouldn't get stuck with some of the ranked beginners because you want to help them out, get them going, right? And then I wouldn't want to bog someone down who was, super advanced. Like if I'm working on something that I'm very beginner at, it's like, okay, I'm good. Okay, you can go off and do your thing. I'll rep it over here, right? So I think I wouldn't want to keep someone. I could kind of tell if this person's teaching me. Once I got it, I'm like, okay, thanks. I'll work with you. We got it. And then I'll let someone else, right? So you kind of have to get that sense of, like Mike Perez, like you were saying, where your own level is. If I don't know the variations, if they go, okay, we got 5 minutes. Are you guys ready? Go. If I stand up and look at my notes and go, I don't know what's going on. That's a different level than go, okay, cool, let's do this, right? Which is a different level than looking around and go, okay, do you guys remember any of this? Those are 3 different places to be, right? So you have to kind of know that.
It's almost like understanding seminar etiquette.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, what's the etiquette? What's the responsibilities of us when it comes to partnering? Let's say you come to it, you have no partner, you come by yourself. So that's the kind of the etiquette we're looking at, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously you want to find someone who's somewhat knowledgeable, close to your level, or maybe just a slight bit above, because I would feel bad if I went to someone who was advanced. I mean, we all go to there to learn. And so we're all paying to come there to get something out of it. But
right.
I don't want that guy that's going to monopolize somebody else's time the entire time and take
we all feel like that, but there's people who don't. That's not.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, and that's something you've got to recognize in yourself. And again, you've got to be honest with yourself on what level you're at, and be willing to ask the questions, but also be willing to accept the answers.
Right.
Yeah, I think as far as etiquette goes to that end, like, excuse me, I'm just joking. Remembering that nobody at the event owes you anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a beginner, that's a good thing to remember. It's maybe not what we want to hear, but nobody from the host to the teacher to anybody else that's there owes you the concrete explanation that allows you as an individual to walk away having retained or understood 100% of this. That's my personal belief, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But you have an opportunity to be there and you paid for the experience, but there isn't like a promise that you're going to walk away being a black belt in whatever the hell you were shown, right? And so being grateful to be able to get and retain what you can is important. I think we all have to be sensitive to the fact that if you're a beginner, 1, you might feel a bit like you're drowning, you're in over your head. And 2, nobody wants to be the last person picked for the team. That's a shitty feeling, that sucks. And so you don't have a partner, you look around, everyone else is partnered off. You don't have anyone, then you happen to notice one other person, they don't have a partner, and then they realize you're a beginner and they kind of drop like, oh, great, I got to work with this guy. That's a terrible feeling. Nobody wants to have that feeling. I know my wife, Mariah, talked about the very first time she went to a Guru Inosanto seminar. She thought of pretending to go to the bathroom. Hopefully she won't mind me saying it, but she thought of pretending to go to the bathroom and just dipping out because she was so overwhelmed and nervous and like, this is way too much. I'm in over my head. I don't even know why I came to this. I'm not ready for this level of training.
All felt that way.
100%, right? She was
the complete opposite. I'm a spider monkey and I'll jump on somebody and make them be my partner.
So what happened was
you come here.
Somebody recognized that she was going through that, probably because he'd gone through it as well, and kind of took her under his wing. He was there with 1 or 2 other students, so he was still able to get his reps, right? He was there with people that he knew, but he included her. So that's always made me think of 2 things. 1, provided you're not leaving someone else to be the odd man out with no partner, there might be value to finding a group of 2 or 3 people and politely asking, with some awareness, hey, I'm a beginner at this. I don't want to hold you guys back, but could I work with your group a little bit so that I can at least get a couple of things, right? So you're not asking one person to be responsible for you. You're kind of just globbing onto a group and taking a little bit away from that. You're kind of dispersing the responsibility amongst the group. And on the other side of that, if you are part of a group, inviting that individual when you recognize it and realizing that, using MRI as an example, I mean, she's still trained. She runs this gym with me. We met, got married, have kids because of this thing. Had she been left feeling like I can't do this and this isn't for me, what would the snowball effect of that been? But instead, that dude went to her and said, "Don't worry, I got you," and it has been a thing in her life ever since. So you can really have a serious impact on people if you make them feel welcome, but there can be that strategic way to go about it. You don't have to sacrifice all your time, and you don't have to ask the other person to do that. If you can find a group of nice enough people and you're self-aware, like you keep talking about Mike Perez, and you're coming with a sense of gratitude, not like, well, lucky for you, you get to train me. I think you'll go far,
Right. And that brings up something that I love about Rick Faye seminars is, don't get me wrong, at the beginning, it was very nerve-wracking for me because I'm not always a social person, but I like when he does the round robin and makes everybody change partners. I think that's great because it's a great way of getting to know other people instead of just sticking to your group or particular people that you always cling to when you see them at seminars. It makes you get to know other people and just say, "Oh, hey, how you doing? What are you doing here? What brought you here?" And you're making friends as you're training, and just makes it a better, more welcome atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. And it allows you to kind of zero in on people that you felt comfortable with, people that clearly know a thing or two, people that are willing to help, people that seem to have a certain, not status, but stature in the room. I mean, the Hatches are the greatest example that what specifically the people I'm thinking of while you're talking about this, Mike Perez, is that. And it's hopefully this doesn't become a thing where we encourage people, go bug the Hatches if you have, God forbid.
Because they're like, these 4 guys said, find you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. And they're so nice, they'll do it, but that's not right. So
Before you know it, they've got a line of 10 people just standing in front of them like,
yeah,
"Hey."
right. I know. I mean, that's kind of how I met them. I was that dude. But I think you're right. It does allow people, if you're somebody who teaches seminars, that's a good thing to encourage one another to do as teachers, is have them switch partners regularly. One thing that Rick will say that I echo in classes all the time, it's one of his go-to lines is, hello, my name is. So grab somebody, hello, my name is, which right away, or he'll overtly say, grab somebody you've not met or someone you've not worked with, because it forces you to, it puts you in a different state here, a different state here. It forces you to get outside of your comfort zone. It forces you to teach or to learn, to be open-minded, to also discover who you have a natural rapport with or who you don't. And that's going to help you develop training partners. So really go out, and like you're saying, Mike, I'm the same way. I love these events. I love hosting them. It's the greatest, other than my kids, the greatest joy in my life to be able to participate in them. By the end of them, I am so smoked, exhausted from over socializing that I can't see straight, right? But having those opportunities to just go introduce yourself to somebody and then politely punch them in the face. You're like, yeah, right. Like, it is really just that. And that kind of helps you get over the awkwardness of like, hi, do you want to be my training partner? You've got somebody that's going, you don't have to worry about it. Just goes, hey, my name's Kurt. Here we go, bat, and let's get into it. It kind of helps use some of that anxiety.
Well, that's a great go, because then the understanding is, once that's happening, is like, look, we're all going to end up kind of training with each other. So everyone trains with everybody. And then you're over it at that point. There is no stuck with somebody or anything, and so, I think that it just changes the dynamic.
Yeah, this could be 2 different experiences too. It could be that, with a constant partner changing, what you just said, Tim, is we're all training together. So the emphasis here is on training and perhaps community or diversity of training partners, whatever the experience of training. Other seminars might be more about the data, right? Again, like I said before, how does this influence your curriculum, You've been training with this person for 40 years, but he or she has added new things or tweaked a few things, and they want you to know that. And this is your only opportunity to learn that. So they want you to train when you're there, but there's a reason that round is 90 seconds because they want you to train after when you get home. Right now, we need to make sure you get everything that you can train.
Right.
And then going into these things as best as you can, what the nature of the event is, will kind of help you calibrate your expectations accordingly.
Yeah, and based on that, that's an amazing point. You have to be able to take whatever notes that you can take, and you have to be able to train that stuff when you leave. That's so even if whether you have an instructor or not, right? It's harder if you don't have an instructor. Then you really have to get the notes thing down. You have to have a training partner. The training methodologies, the way you're training is even more important. Because if you have an instructor, you can kind of lean on them. You go back, you go, man, I don't know what I was talking about. What was this one thing we did? And they can break it down for you. So that's much easier. You know, people lean on that when they, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't pay attention. My instructor is going to break it down for me. Right? That's lazy, right? You want to have your notebooks, right? You want to have your notebooks. You want to, you know,
It's
yeah.
fun to say that because I just went through that with the hatches because there were some things in the seminar that I kind of got lost on. And it was because I was working with some people who were a little lost as well. So, and my notes weren't that great. So as soon as I got with them, it was like, hey, can we go back and revisit that real quick? Because I kind of got a little lost and you know, we reviewed it and it worked out. But yeah.
And having access to an instructor makes all that difference.
Yes.
That's a
But
super
I'm
important point.
lazy about it and relying on them.
Yeah. Well, and as instructors, so if I can add a couple of things with that, because I think that's a great point and a great kind of next section to really think about. So as instructors, if you're attending a seminar of somebody, you know, of a different style or a different level above you, whatever, and you're bringing students with you, one, be prepared to and allow the space to be that you're going to answer questions for them when you're there, right? That's just part of it. They're conditioned to go to you with these things. I think that just has to be okay. I to each their own, but I don't like the idea of an instructor being like, you know, forget you, this, you know, when I'm here, this is my time. Like you kind of have to account for that. What I always do, all classes that I had last week was, okay, we're reviewing stuff topically based on each class that Rick had us doing during the seminar. Because I know they got questions. I don't even need to ask them. You know, I can ask what's the parts that you were the most confused on, and I'll put that in, but I know we're going to review. The best person I've ever seen do this is Rick Fay, who in his, and I think I've talked about this before, at least with you, Tim, in his weekly instructor classes when I was coming up, every Tuesday night instructor class after a Dan and Asano seminar, he would say, bring your notes. We'd come in, and instead of jumping right into whatever we were training or whatever kind of high level stuff, we'd sit down and he'd say, okay, what'd you get? And it is, to me, one of the like highest level, like this is truly a master of his craft because he had the humility to sit in front of his students and not go, this is what he did. And instead would ask, what did you see from him? Right? Instead of saying, I'm the Dan and Asano authority, I'm going to teach you everything he just taught you. He would say, what did you get in your notes? Because there's a good chance I missed something that you guys got. And we would have this sort of relaxed conversation going through things. And then we would train that stuff and it would provide an opportunity for us to go, I'm glad you said that because I missed that. And you go, okay, well, let's look at it. You know, to me, it's just, it was the coolest thing to see somebody be that humble every time and say, all right, look to us. What did you guys get? Right. And so being able to have that opportunity to go through that stuff. And then the last piece to that, in my opinion, being it should be no surprise. Again, Mike Yuskiw, your point of not everybody has an instructor to go through this stuff. Well, who is Rick Fay as an example? It's important, I think, and relevant that he comes up a lot in this conversation because he's kind of the seminar trained Dan Asano student. Right? He's one of the only senior full instructors in the world under Dan and Asano, and he's seminar trained. He was not a guy who trained at the academy. He's been at the academy and trained there, but he wasn't a regular ongoing student. He is, if nothing else, a true master of
doing your homework.
Data,
Yeah.
holding it, keeping it alive like a flame or a lightning bug in a jar, bringing it home, grabbing a couple of friends that he likes to train with and going, here's what I got. Let's work on it. Right. And literally all of MKG as an institutional organization or a training group is an outgrowth of him having done that for 40 years, right? 40, 50 years of just doing this. And this is what I got, bringing it back, and then they train it. In that scenario, yeah, the seminars are a training opportunity, but really they're a learning opportunity. And the training happens after the fact, right?
Okay,
and
correct.
if you can try to keep that mindset going, well, I'm not getting the reps I want to get. You're kind of not here to get reps, right?
No,
You're
exactly.
kind of here to
Not enough
learn
time.
this.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why the guy's as good as he is and can teach a seminar the way that he can, because he just really, really gets it. And these are great examples of people to look to for some of these best ways to go about it, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of makes me think of it. You know, Kurt, you call them the don't be that guys. So, you know, the don't be that guys that come there and get really worked up about the reps and then go like hardcore. You know, we've had that happen at Legends, which is a huge room full of people, right? 100 people in that academy. And you got a couple of guys that think they need to throw their training partner down and go hard. And you're like, you don't have the room for that.
Right.
Get an understanding of this. Your practice like that is going to happen at home in your joint, not here destroying other people's joints by throwing your training partner onto them.
Yeah.
I wrote down 6 examples of things for don't be that guy. And the last one, Tim, is no one's impressed. Yeah, the last one is just no one's impressed by you. Right? Yeah. If you're here as a student at the seminar, no one's impressed by you because no one's impressed by you. Don't be the guy where you called up to help with a demo. You're like, Bruce Lee time. Here we go. I'm going to go super hard, super fast, you know, or like, I'm going to really kiss Guru Dan's ring here and the way that I go about it. Like, just be relaxed, just calm down, you know, because no one is going to walk away going, that was a really good seminar. But I got to tell you, the guy in the red shirt that went up for 20 seconds and did that thing really stole the show from Dan and South. You know,
have you guys wanted to ever respond like with the Enter the Dragon? They get up there, they do that thing. You go, what was that? And
But those round kicks were definitely up here, though, weren't they?
Yeah, more often than not, it's not even what they were asked to demonstrate. It was the irony.
Yeah. That brings to mind another of the don't be that guy of, you know, when I go to seminars, I'm a huge advocate of, you know, closed mouth, open eyes, open ears. You know, it's not about what I know. It's I'm going there to learn. So they don't care what I know. I'm not there to tell them what I know. It's what can I get from it? And you always get that one guy that he's from a different art and he's trying to show that off. Oh, well, yeah, but I would do this and this, and I would do this. But that's not what we're doing. Just what we're doing here. Okay. That's not what we're doing. You know, I was actually working with someone at the FAE seminar where this happened, and I had to tell them, stop, that's not what we're doing. Well, I get that. And I know you have options, but you're going to mess me up and I'm here to learn. I don't want to get hurt on my first day. So let's just back this off a little bit and stick to what we're doing at the moment, stick to the day's lessons. So we both can get something out of this and I don't get hurt.
Yeah. And why do all of your questions sound like you're giving your resume?
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes what some of these guys will do is they'll ask a question that really isn't a question. It's like, look how knowledgeable I am that I can ask this kind of question.
Yes.
Right.
It reminds me of the stewards. Look what I can do. Look what I can do. Right. Like, I'm not here to see you. I'm here to see Rick Fay. I want to see.
Now, in some cases, like if you're partnering, like someone comes in and they wear their uniform with their belt, right? Like there might be a little bit of like there's this maybe a little bit of like ego or a reality check that's happening where the what ifs start to come out, and maybe they actually there's a process they have to go through to realize, well, wait a second, everything that I thought worked really well doesn't seem to work here. And then a lot of stuff that for a long time, like, you know, the people that wear their own uniform and their belt outside in the world, that means something. Like, I feel weird wearing the belt and the uniform out in the world where no one's wearing uniforms. It means nothing to regular people. You look like you're in pajamas, right? It's like at a seminar, I feel like a lot of them coming in like this means something. Therefore, the way I approach this stuff means something. I would just do this. So, Mike, what you're talking about is almost like I think this actually goes to some of the stuff that I mean, it's there's some themes you're working with. Like Kurt, you're talking about the social elements you're navigating. That's a really serious social element to navigate. It's like, look, there's a almost a safety blanket that you're wearing that you kind of have to take off, and it's okay. It's going to be scary, but remember when you were white belt, it's okay. And then you get pulled in because you're like, you're safe with me. And then at when okay, time, and then when they go, okay, 5 minutes, can you do this? They come back to you because you're safe. Like, oh my God, I'm so scared here now. I got to stay with you, right? So like, there can be a good thing there as long as you don't get tied in. You have to be like, okay, I'm with you, but don't leave me over here. Get over here. Like, someone that you've talked to, the social connections you made when you're like, fist bump, I'm glad you're here, man. You get, hey, you want to work in? And then you got to keep that social, like we're all in a party together because otherwise you'll get pulled down one avenue or another, right? You don't want to stay there.
Well, I do have to say though, that not wearing your like karate uniform to the FMA seminar or whatever is a really good example of don't be that guy. It is
Seriously.
an example, which I think is part of what you're saying here.
Please.
Like it's not a Halloween costume party, guys.
Just the
It's-
sweatpants.
Yeah, well, like, I have an example of that in my life of a class that I used to teach weekly at Rick's gym, and a guy I knew kind of through friends came into town and dropped in on the class and wore his karate uniform, and we're all wearing sweatpants or shirts or jeans.
Foot of the loom. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is part of what you're saying, Mike, is like we didn't have this word growing up. It was a very like cringy kind of thing, right? It was like, oh man, and actually another guy I knew walked off he was in the BJJ class and left and joined my class in his full BJJ uniform just to train with him. I don't know if he was teasing him or he felt bad for him, but he was at least somebody else here is going to have the wrong, clothes on for this. But I do think he walked away from that experience going, oh, I really stepped in it there, didn't I? I kind of thought I was showing my rank to let people know that I know a thing or two. And then unfortunately, I just looked like a fish out of water. And I don't think he's ever made that mistake again. So there is some value to some of that stuff.
I agree.
It's better to like not have to learn the hard way for some
Right.
reason.
Yeah, we had one like that too. Guy did it. It was from out of the country somewhere. One day, drop in the academy and waltzed in one of those very colorful taekwondo uniforms with his belt with all the stuff on it. It was like Animal House when the guys walk into the black bar and everything stops, the record scratches, everyone stares at them and they go, "We are gonna die." It's just like everyone's like, "What the hell is this?" And the best part is, in my position there, I get a lot of people wandering over, talking out the side of their mouth. What's that guy wearing that uniform for? What, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't sign him up. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and it's part of that can, the list of don't be that guy can also be the list of things to kind of call ahead about, right? You know what I mean? To arm yourself with knowledge ahead of time. Is it appropriate to wear that? Or could that be seen as, I don't know, some sort of challenge? Or you kind of trying to big dog people that you're showing in that uniform?
It's not a problem, but you're right. You walk, like if you were to, let's say, I don't know how many years ago, you would have marched into, say, an Ajahn Chai seminar with some sort of black belt and gi on. They might have been thinking, oh, you're here to throw down. Okay, come on up here. We're going to kick you in the leg,
Yep, you're saying something here, and you really have to be cautious that you know what you're saying in the things that you're not really saying,
Right.
Should we look at, so I have a couple other things written down of not being that guy. Should we look at them?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, and I know you guys will have your own, so I'll just to get the ball rolling, but a big one, because this ties to note taking, is filming. Certainly, I think everybody probably knows this, but don't assume that you can film anything ahead of time. Even be kind of sensitive to having your phone out, period. You might just be reading a text message, but it sure looks like you're filming. Avoid using those things. I like to use an iPad for note taking, with the stylus and everything. It's a better situation for me, but I have to really be conscientious or let somebody in the leadership group know ahead of time. I'm not using this for anything other than note taking. I'll show you what I'm doing. Is that okay? Make sure you know what the policy is. If you are allowed to film the instructor, cool. Okay, that's their choice, and that helps with the note taking. I still think, by the way, you're going to learn a lot by writing things down and taking notes, but nevertheless, sometimes the trick is you're allowed during the break to film your training partner doing the thing. And so you're not filming the teacher. That will allow you to have maybe better notes or to be able to replicate the combinations, the drills or whatever. So those are kind of hacks that you can use to use your technology and devices in a productive way without kind of breaking rules or doing something that's considered, not okay.
Right. Well, I think to kind of going backwards. So the technology I think is great. Yes, like we were talking about, getting into groups, rewriting your notes, this sort of thing. I think afterwards going and filming with each other some of the stuff that's in your notes is a good idea. I think that's great. And then going backwards from there, being someone obviously at the academy that I'm at, don't be that guy that when you're told to put your damn phone away, that you're going to give some attitude about taking pictures. Why can't I take this? And why can't I take that? And it's like, I'll give some long and short at our school why this happens. Number one, just privacy in general. People, privacy. You're in a private school. You're not actually in public. You're in a private business. You do not have the right to just start photographing people or, well, I'm just photographing my kid, as I'll hear in the kids' class. No, I'm sorry. Your camera is aiming at children, the class, and it's aiming at things. And we have, say, at the academy, we have kids that their parents are somebody out there, and so therefore photographs or video of those kids may be valuable to tabloids, and we're just not allowing that to happen. I'm not going to say if or not that is true, but let's put it that's a possibility. So private.
Boy, I can relate to that. Am I right?
Yeah, individuals who are at the school itself, being what we train, military, police. These are people who might be their real selves in that building right then, and outside they're actually playing the role as someone else because of. So their identity and the secrecy involved in that could be compromised by your photographs and your video. Therefore, we do not allow it. We have certain things on the walls that could be fraudulently recreated for the benefits of people. We have things that, again, also revolve around the identities of people who are potentially doing work for national security or law enforcement. So, basically the best way to wrap all that up is privacy. Bottom line, privacy. It is the privacy of other people that you are sharing a space with, why you should not be whipping your camera out to try to film the instructor or film anything or take pictures of things without permission. That's the bottom line answer that I can give to that. And yes, don't be a guy, because that is from a person who has to play that enforcement game. Wow, that is frustrating. And I have come close to wanting to physically throw some people out for their back talk on that. And they tend to kind of, usually the moment we say, well, that's okay, we'll let Paula know this is how you feel, they backtrack
Nice.
I'd say you pretty much
off of that.
put a bow around that one, my friend.
Yeah,
I think
I would like, yeah, she's mean, but I'd be more afraid of me. I'm the one right here in your face, and I'm actually quite pissed off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so like knowing ahead of time, asking what the policy is, respecting what the policy is, and not assuming that you're owed an explanation why the policy is what it is.
Exactly.
It just is what it is. And my last detail on that being, having just hosted a big seminar event last weekend, I found it interesting, and Mike, you were here. There was a thing we did at the end. We ran out of time for this long grappling sequence. And or no, it was a disarm sequence. And Rick was kind enough to try to squeeze it in as best as he could, because it was one thing I very specifically asked him for, because it was something I wanted for my notes. So I was like, to be honest, as long as I can just kind of get it on camera or whatever, or if I can sit down with you after the fact and write it down or whatever, while you're here, I just want to bug you to make sure I can get it because it's important.
Mhm.
And so he was then nice enough to recognize, well, maybe other people would feel the same way. So
Yeah.
for this last bit, what did he say? If you guys want to get your phones out or whatever and record this sequence, go ahead and do it, right?
Yep.
Well, what was fascinating to me was from that moment on, everything he did, everyone looked like this.
Yeah.
You could no longer see anyone's face. Everyone was so focused on watching his demonstrations through the little screen instead of the person that's in front of them. Everyone, and I understand why they want to have it in their notes too and everything. So I
Mhm.
get the desire to do it, but it kind of changes how you're engaging in the room, right?
It
You're
opened
probably going
Pandora's
to
box.
remember things better if you write it down or if you get the reps, and everyone immediately defaulted to, I'm just going to film this and worry about it later. And
Yeah.
that is fascinating, right? It
Yep.
just, once he gave permission, everyone stopped being a student and became a paparazzi or whatever.
Right.
And that
Right.
was it, right?
A
And so,
spectator instead of a participator.
yes,
Wow.
right,
Yes.
right.
I think that falls in line with piggybacking off of what you were talking about earlier, and Tim, is basically just understanding the etiquette of the gym that you're going to. You
Yeah.
know,
It's
when you
basic.
go there, talking to the instructor or the host and finding out, or the gym owner and say, okay, what's allowed here? What do I need to know to be here? Are we allowed, like I had asked you about the shoes on the mat, and things like that, are wrestling shoes allowed? What can we do on the mat? Where do you want our equipment? Um, I remember when you came up to Brett and I, and your joke of the pet peeve of the disarm, the flying equipment over near the display case and such. Those
Because you hit something with a disarm. That's the
right.
part he's not. He was like, you
Yeah.
joke that you have a pet peeve that people hit things. That's because Mike threw a stick across the room into my glass showcase. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. But understanding those things, that okay, so when you're
Sure.
things like disarms, okay, so let's not go full force and just be real crazy and ballistically just throw it across the room at somebody else. Understand we're all here to train and we're all here to be comfortable, and we want to work in a safe environment. Again, the gym etiquette. Be that guy. Be that guy who goes up and asks those questions instead of just has to be the person that the owner comes up to and says, "Hey, you might not doing that because you're going to break something or you're going to hit somebody, or I don't like that."
Yeah.
You guys are talking about the right kind of questions. So
Right.
Yes.
there's an example of don't be that guy where you're asking the wrong kind of questions or you're asking the wrong kind of questions at the wrong time. So let's say, for example, you don't have the presence of mind to do what you guys are talking about, right? You didn't really check with seminar hosts, or you didn't really check in with the instructor, and it's been a long morning, and all of a sudden we're breaking for lunch, and then you got to go right up to the seminar instructor, and you got to have, and now you want to tell a story, right? They've been telling stories, and you know what, Kurt? I take notes on the stories too. I'm loving the stories, but at lunch, now all of a sudden, you know what? I've been hearing stories all morning. I want to tell a story now. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry. I just have to tell you.
I got to tell you this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
right,
while the
I really
instructor-
felt it. We had a connection. I felt it. Did you feel it? I was feeling it earlier. I got to tell you this. You know
Yeah,
what?
while
The,
the guy who does the
the
seminars
instructor's got to go to lunch, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got an hour and a half for lunch. Didn't you? Maybe it's only an hour for lunch. You got to get the subway, buddy. You got to get that going. So don't be that guy and take the only little valuable rest time that the instructor has. They'll appreciate you more if you just let them do their thing, right? Maybe in between rounds, you take a minute of your own training time to tell that story, not the instructor's time. So don't be that guy and use the instructor's time. That's just one of the pet peeves that I had. Seeing people flood one of the seminar instructors, and I'm like, oh my God, guys, do the photo op later. Are you guys kidding me? So,
Buddy, number 2 and 3 on my list is hovering and when to ask for pictures. And it's exactly what you're talking about, right? So hovering is that thing where they're kind of, excuse me, you can see it. They're sort of, I to be honest with you, I see it because I know I did this, right? When as a new person or whatever, they're kind of like cozying up to the seminar guy. And they're sort of hanging looking outside of there. They're waiting for their chance to be like, oh, I just wanted to tell you. And sometimes it's sweet. They've always wanted to tell this person what they mean to them, whatever. And that stuff's important. I get that. But yeah, a lot of times it's like, well, you can see them waiting for their chance to be like, in my system, we do it this way or whatever, or waiting for their chance to ask for a photo opportunity. And unless it's the time when everyone is doing photos, it's probably the wrong time, right? This is akin to going up to your favorite actor you bump into at a restaurant, they're having dinner with their family, and you're like, hey, can I ask you to take a picture with them? You might be that person that does it, but that's not appropriate. Or they're just their children having a meal. It's maybe one thing if you catch them walking. I don't know what would be appropriate, not a celebrity, but when the right time is. But I can tell you that's probably not the right time.
But yeah, not a dinner with their family.
Not a dinner with their family. When the seminar instructor and the host person are trying to go to lunch and have their own thing that they're doing, that's similarly not the right time to do it. And if you're going like, yeah, but when else will I have a chance? It sucks to hear it. Maybe you just won't, and I get that that's disappointing too. But again, you're not the most important person in the room, unfortunately. And sometimes that's going to be the case. We all have experiences where we got to go to this really amazing event and we didn't get the picture or the thing or the opportunity that we wanted. It's why Comic-Con is on this side of me, where you pay money to get these autographs and take pictures with these people. That's why that exists, because otherwise there's not always the opportunity to get to do that, Well,
usually the host does set forth a time. And I know, yes. Just for instance, we do this with Guru Dan. We do, those of us there that are helping run the thing, we talk about it. We say, okay, when are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? Because we have a way that we normally do it. We just kind of make sure, okay, is this the way we're going to do it again this time? And that guy that I hate is when you set forth that window and you go, here it is. Get in line now. Do it. It's been done 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, oh, can I? And you're like, Jesus, did you not hear? Did you not get in line? Like, oh my God, the guy just spent 6 hours teaching today. He'd kind of like to have some dinner now.
Right. Or there is that line. There's the phenomenal long line that takes in the line and the teacher 30 minutes to get through this line. You're finally at the front of the line and you're like, right, where's the group of people I want to take the picture with? How does my phone work? That kind of thing. Yeah. Like, dude, have everything ready to go by the time
right there. That's the guy that's been waiting in line at McDonald's forever and gets up and starts to look at the menu.
And for the love of God, this is personal pet peeve, but maybe you guys will agree. For the love of God, do not ask that man to pose for your picture with you.
Yeah, can we do cheese out?
Yeah, we do a thing where I get to, I'm punching you or whatever. Just to take the picture and then move away.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that is the guy that shows up with the stack of shit. I've got 30 things for you to sign. Oh, fuck. Wow.
We had to do that's a really good one too, because I often will show up with something hoping if there's an opportunity to get the sign for me, for a friend, for my kids or whatever. And that's the thing that 9.5 times out of 10 will never happen, because the opportunity is just not there and you're going to be really disruptive to ask for it.
Mm-hmm. But we can, if it's a thing, I can help arrange for it. But when it's 30 fucking things, oh my God, I'm going to probably drag you out by your ears at that point.
I see that a lot of Comic-Cons, and it drives me insane when you're just waiting in line to have 1 or 2 things signed and somebody shows up with a huge stack of stuff, and that they have that stuff there because they sell it on eBay and just get it, put on there.
Right.
Dude, are you serious?
I've always worse
is when waiting for this.
Right? When that guy's in front of you and you finally get there with your one thing, the guy is so pissed off signing at that point that, you're an asshole. You're like, no, I'm not the asshole. The guy that was 30, he's the asshole.
You finally have enough and you blow up and you're like, are you fucking serious? Come on. That's the dirty shows up and they're throwing you out, and it's like, not that it ever happened or anything, but but yeah.
That's all I think on my list of traps to not fall into, or piles of shit to not accidentally step on. I don't if you guys have we've kind of touched on all the other ones I had written down just through the course of conversation. That one other thing I will say is, recognize too that it's not easy to teach to large groups of people. And sometimes that teaching style will involve the person teaching finding one or two people to teach to so that they can be heard by their group, which might include kind of making eye contact with somebody in the front row or whatever. These are just public speaking tips that you're given over time. You know, sometimes you teach to the back of the room, you look over everyone's head. Sometimes you picture everyone naked. Sometimes you find one person and you talk to them so everyone else can hear. And I would say one thing I've observed over time is the person who happens to get the eye contact is like, he means me, you know, like
that show.
Yeah, like
that connection. It's that connection he was talking
yeah,
about.
exactly. There's a reason he picked me. And when he's talking about some of you are talented, you're like, yeah, thanks. You know, so like try to take that with a grain of salt too.
Yeah.
But if you really have to do that thing we were talking about where you got to go up to the seminar instructor, I think the best time to do it is when we're still training and they go, okay, 5 minutes, go. And then you go up. I think if you're really going to use any time, use your own training time because they're still in the damn seminar, right? They're like, okay, 5 minutes, go. And you're like, okay, I just had to say something. Do it then. Don't do it when the seminar breaks. You know what I mean?
Well, and be wary of the time that they gave you. Don't ask them a 10-minute answer question when you've been given 5 minutes. Yeah. To do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to give you one more just because it just happened last weekend. When they just walk into the building, don't be standing by the door waiting to ask questions, right? Oh, I'm glad you're here with the seminar person. Can I buy a hoodie from you? Like we still have our shoes on. The third person in our group is still in the parking lot. That, you know, just take a break a little bit. That's all.
The ambusher guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
I guess I'll give one too from a personal standpoint of you know, I'm the guy running the camera at the event, and you know, I want to kind of ask you guys about maybe some what we'll call default no etiquettes until you're told different. But one of the things I want to say is be aware of the space that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
If there is somebody officially filming, they are the ones who are officially filming and taking the photographs. So, you know, we discussed, you know, taking photographs and stuff, but be aware of that camera, and that camera is filming the event. And it could be they're putting this out for you for later, or it could be even for their own internal use. It doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. In front of that camera is not the place for you to stand. And when the instructor starts talking, if your body is between that camera and that instructor, get out of the damn way, because it really gets frustrating making the announcement, which I'll always do at the beginning. If I see newer people, instructor camp, I don't need to do that because people aren't new, they know. And that always works out just perfectly fine for the most part. You know, if it's at a seminar where I've not seen a lot of these people before, I have to make the announcement because I can already see their face like, well, who is this with a camera and all this? And if I can't, and why is this person able to? And it's like, you haven't put together that, you know, this is the official thing. So I make the announcement. So they're clear as to who I am, and they're clear as to don't get between me and the person doing the demo and the talking, because what you're doing is making a product that if this was to be put out for you to purchase, you're making it unpurchasable.
Right.
You're like ruining the product itself.
Yeah, it's a good tip. And I think a lot of people aren't used to being around cameras in that way, you know. So they're not conscientious of it because they're just not in that habit. You know? It's already hard enough. Like Rick will always make fun of himself. He's somebody who has like this magical ability to always turn his back to the camera.
Oh, Guru's got it too.
Really, it is the craziest phenomenon where one of my students that was actually the business manager here, Bree, was trying to shoot some footage for me during the seminar. She's like, hey, like, he keeps always giving me his back. I was like, this is an ongoing joke with him. Right. So if you're also getting in the way, that is not helping.
Yeah. No. Guru's good at that. Sifu Francis pretty good at it too at times too. That's why I've now put that camera on wheels. Oh man. So what do you guys think of some like let's say default no's? Like I would say a default no when you go in for a seminar is no photography. Unless you're told different, just assume it's no. Take your shoes off before you like go traipsing around in there. Consider that a default. you know, you kind of guys. Yeah. So what other defaults do you think you guys, people should default to, unless they're told different?
No showing off. You know, understand that you're there to learn, and just be generous with your partner, and, you know, be compliant. Don't muscle up. Don't show
Yeah.
off. You know,
Go slow and easy. Right. Be
yes. Be cooperative.
Yeah.
Yep.
Similarly, like it's always okay to ask questions, but it's not okay to question the teacher, if that distinction makes sense, right? So, you know, you're there to learn what it is they have to offer. If you think that would work, or you think you have a better idea, or you had an experience wherein this should have happened instead, it's
Keep that to yourself.
100% irrelevant. Keep it to yourself. Just work on what they're asking you to work on, and don't worry about anything else. Just let it be what it is.
Piggybacking off of that, like Guru Rick had mentioned in the seminar, when people tend to ask, "Oh, well, what would you do if they punch? Well, what about if they were to punch you this way?" You know, those types of questions. You know, just leave it for the end instead of disrupting the seminar for some silly question like that, because obviously they're going to have an answer for it, and if they felt relevant to show it, they would. But
one thing we used to always say with that is, my God, in the 500 years that this art was germinating, no one once ever thought, could they punch you? You know, like, thank God you're here today, because no one has ever thought of this, you know. And the other side of that is
an epiphany. Oh my
no,
God.
oh, punching is a thing. I didn't know. The other side of that is, a lot of times, which is why he was making the joke, because I was the guy he's demoing on, is the person that's being demoed on is really going to get tuned up when you ask some of those questions, because it's just going to get, well, could they punch you from there? Yeah. So because of that, this is how you really have to hurt them. And so sometimes it's the person getting demoed on that's like, you know, it'd be nice if you stopped interrupting with questions, because this is physically painful for me.
Right,
We're just trying to move on, you know.
Being a guy who was put in a Larry Hartzell lock, when someone would ask a question, you're like, "Oh my God, shut the fuck up, dude! I'm dying."
Yes. Yeah. Only demo guys.
That reminds me of one like that. Here, I'm going to give you guys something really funny in the audience too. Go to Amazon, look up Larry Hartzell's Enter to Trapping to Grappling book, and you're going to find a book review in there. You'll find there's several book reviews, and there's a really funny one of some dude who apparently went to a seminar of Larry's and said, "Yeah, I don't know about this guy. He put me in a figure 4 arm lock, and I asked him, well, can't I just punch you with the other hand? And all he did was put it on me harder and put me on the ground." And I'm like, I had to respond to it, and I just went, "Yeah, that was your answer.
Yeah,
you could try to punch. Where did you end up? Face down. Okay." And because he said something like, "Yeah," and he didn't answer my question. I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He totally answered the question, idiot.
Yeah. Those of you that know Keith Middlebrooks from my gym, his famous line was, having asked something like that while I was demoing on him, and then the violence just got worse and worse. After the demo, he was like, "I should have just stopped and let you kick me in the nuts to begin with. Like, I should have just been like, yeah, okay, that's good." Because he was like, "Well, what about the next thing?" He's like, "I should just let you kick me in the nuts."
Yeah, just cut out the middleman. Let's go straight to the growing shot, right? Yeah.
That like the Johnny Carson joke about next time I'm just going to find a woman I already don't like and give her a house.
Nice. Nice.
Half.
But I think the only no that we haven't covered, we already touched on earlier, is don't be the guy that steals the floor to ask the question just to have the spotlight on me. So now, maybe 10 years ago when this kind of system was in favor, do you think that we would have used this type of, come on, don't go into this long thing just to make it seem like you're the one that can only ask this highfalutin question. Like, I have to steal the floor to be like, I'm the only one with this kind of perspective to even ask this question here. Dude, get out of here, right? So don't waste everybody's time because the instructor is going to try and respect the question in some way. And you just wanted to seem like a guy good enough to ask that kind of question. Don't do it. Just train. They'll notice. Just train.
Yeah. Like a one-upper.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'm putting a gap in here right now, Tim, in case you want to edit this part out.
Oh, disclaimer.
But so I do think it's worth mentioning, because Grinasano has come up, and exactly what you're talking about here, Mike, of like, be mindful of the kinds of questions you ask. Use it with him as an example, and this is not my place to say this, but because we're talking about it, maybe it's worth mentioning. The Bruce Lee questions.
Oh,
Right. Not only is it inappropriate in the sense of this is not a Bruce Lee seminar, this is a Dan Inosanto seminar, but more to my point, and we're coached this all the time with MKG, is that Bruce Lee was a real person, and he was Drew Inosanto's dear friend, and a tragedy took place. And you're now in an open environment asking candid questions that's putting somebody back into this traumatic situation. And it's a really inappropriate thing. Probably you wouldn't do that in another circumstance, right? You know, I've lost friends. We all have. Would you candidly just be like, oh, I wanted to ask you a question about your buddy that Pat, you know, like that's not an appropriate thing to do. And I think people kind of get so stuck in seeing Bruce Lee as this iconic figure and forget that he had personhood, that he was a real walking, talking person, and that the person you're in front of is not just his proxy, and it's not just your way to get close to that source, but is also a real person who has real experiences and memories and feelings. And treating them like they're only a replacement, or like it's okay to bring up things that could be painful, that's a real common thing that I see. And every time it's like, oh, that's just really bad for him, guys.
Right. Yeah. Well, and considering most any Bruce Lee question anybody could think about has already been asked to Guru, and it's out there. The answer is already out there in print and in video and everything. So you're not bringing anything new to that. So yeah, 100%. Yeah. Stay away, because you make that man upset, and then I don't think you necessarily have me to worry about. You got a whole mob action, because I think everyone else is going to step on you.
I didn't mean to bring the mood down, but I do think that's.
Oh yeah, as I say, a little pun. Like yeah.
Like I said, cut that part out if you need to, but like
no, that's actually that's really important. I think, especially, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer to those of us who are around, but for someone new kind of coming in, for something like that, and that can be with anybody. I mean, for instance, it's like, you know, like several of you guys have been saying, do your homework on who it is you're going to study with in this seminar, and what you're going to be learning. And yet don't ask questions are really inappropriate to them. You know, don't ask personal questions. Don't ask, you know, let them, if they want to relate personal stories, allow them to do it, but don't ask for that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Don't ask them if they've ever been in a fight and did it work, or don't, you know what I mean? Like, you know, all of those things that you might be thinking in terms of a martial artist, like, well, this is a legitimate question and I'm actually curious. But what if in that scenario, something really tragic happened or somebody really got hurt, let alone the fact that it's seen as you challenging or questioning things in a way, but you might be bringing up something that they're not comfortable talking about. One, they don't owe you the explanation, and two, it's just not your damn business, you know?
Right. Well, I think, for instance, like one of the fortunate things I got to do when I went to the Philippines was, I mean, where I went was the island of Bohol. And Guru Dan had said, hey, Mike Stone lives there. I'm like, oh, really? No kidding. So I just asked while I was there, and they're like, oh yeah, he lives over here. So I'm like, well, cool. So I went actually up to his house, and we talked to the lady that was his assistant. She's like, oh, this is who, okay, you're connected to this guy. Well, he'd be happy to meet you. So when I went, you know, in there and I introduced myself to him, you know, I think he's very smart in that he was just like, okay, I'm going to be friendly, but I'm going to figure out who the hell you are, really, and what your intentions are. So, I mean, he was very polite. And so as he got talking to me, I'm sure he's thinking, is this a Bruce Lee fanboy? He's going to start asking me about that. Is he someone who's going to start asking me the torrid shit with Elvis and Priscilla and stuff like this? And I didn't. I'm not interested in any of that, to be honest with you. And I knew a lot about him. So I just was asking him, hey, you know, I understand you've lived in the Philippines for 30 years. You know, what brought you here? So as I was asking him more questions about him, things that were publicly known and not controversial crap, just cool stuff, the more he was like, oh. And I think he had me there for like a couple hours, made me a, you know, smoothie with fruit from his trees. And we chatted for a while. I mean, and we, to this day, we still will chat. You know, he's nice gentleman who, you know, I'm invited back. But at some point he did tell me about, you know, his training or not with Bruce Lee, essentially. He told me they didn't do a lot of physical training. It was a lot of philosophical discussions and stuff. And then, and he mentioned something about the Elvis stuff a little bit, but that was after there was some buildup in trust. And again, I think he quite got a really interesting, vibe on me, which was true, which is like, I don't care about that stuff. That's, that's already out there. That's in print. If I was worried about tabloidy junk, I would read about it, but I don't care about that. It's like, you're an interesting person that I read about as a karate guy growing up. So, the time spent was a lot more genuine. And, to this point that now I could message him and he's like, oh, hey, yeah, he remembers who I am and stuff. So, just really kind of a cool guy. And, you learn really interesting things about people and what they have to offer if you approach it a lot more genuinely in that way. And that's what you bring to any interaction, I think, with people that are in these positions.
I think that
common decency.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people become disconnected and don't realize that the people at these seminars are people too. We tend to look, you get these people who look at these instructors that are at these seminars as dancing monkeys, like they're there to entertain us, when they're really there to teach us. And we think that because we pay that we get to monopolize their time and ask them anything, forgetting the fact that they're still humans too. They have feelings and emotions, and like Kurt was saying, asking such personal questions, what it might bring back for them. You wouldn't want to be asked certain questions about your life that are going to put you back into that mindset and make you feel that way. So why would you do that to that person?
Yeah, and nobody wants to feel like the whole reason they're getting your attention is because they want to ask you about somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Stone is going like, oh, this person's glad to meet me, but really they're glad to meet Bruce Lee or Elvis Presley or whatever. You know what I mean? This person's glad to meet Dan Inosanto, but they're having him sign a picture of Bruce Lee. He's not even in the picture. Like how that. I think maybe you get used to it, but I think we can all agree, like, that's not a good feeling. That's, you're just put into a position to where they're going, like two wrong ways to approach this is you're saying nice to meet your friend instead of nice to meet the person you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other side of that is nice to meet me, where, you're acting like you're important and it's a privilege they get to meet you, understand and see people, who they are, where they are, and appreciate that opportunity. And you got Google for the rest of it. Forget about it.
Yeah. Be genuine. Just be genuine and generous.
Also be water.
Yeah, so be like it, just like it,
and walk on, my friends.
And the quote,
guys. We're looking at that. I know you're all East Coast. I'm still the West Coast guy, and we're getting up to probably some bedtimes there potentially.
Oh,
yeah, I already missed the kids' bedtime, so I'm already in trouble.
All right. Well, I guess we should maybe last looks, last words from everyone on this, and then we'll call it a successful show number 2.
Well, on the topic of what we just had, I would say just come with an open mind, open heart, open eyes, and a closed mouth.
Nice.
I'll go next. First of all, I appreciate you guys. This was great. I think the genuineness, some of the other things you guys talked about, with especially at the end there, with what not to do, the notes, the perspective to go in. I think this was a brilliant talk on giving people points on how to really approach the seminar. The seminar is almost an example of how to approach martial arts training. There's a different kind of workshop that you're taking when you're really trying to go in and kind of do it yourself. So thanks for the opportunity tonight to really kind of workshop this conversation. I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, echo that gratitude. And I think you're absolutely right. It's, always have an open mind. If you're there, presumably it's because you want to learn something. If you're there for any other reason, go home. Don't, we're ending this conversation talking about what not to do, but don't go in full of anxiety that, God, I hope if I do something wrong, I'm going to look like that guy.
Right.
We're not trying to fill anyone with a sense of dread. It's just some pointers from things that we've seen. Mostly we're having a good time talking about it and just joking about it. Some of this stuff is undeniably inappropriate, and a lot of it is just little martial art pet peeves. And that sometimes that's also how you learn, and that's fine too. We all have times that we stepped in it and we remember those things, and those are good lessons. But understanding on the day that this is an opportunity, this person has taken time out of their life to come to a different location, usually in order to share something that they have spent probably a very, very, very long time working on or cultivating and mastering. Having the opportunity to sit there and just absorb from an individual is a really big blessing. And so I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. And if you do that, everyone will recognize that in you and will help you keep going forward.
100%. Yeah. And it's like what you're saying, Kurt. I think it's, we kind of just inadvertently, I think, got to like the negative side, which is small. The positive side is huge. I mean, think about when we're talking about seminars, there's very specifically what the topic is, but there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom that you'll either catch immediately or you will realize over time from seminar study, from any kind of study. Realistically, main thing is go enjoy the community. That is the one thing that we've talked about, and the one thing that does not get talked about enough outside of our relatively large circle of people, or maybe they do, maybe we just don't know, but the community is so important. It's like when you guys go to seminar, when I go to seminar, or when we have it here, one of the things I'm looking forward to not only is the knowledge of the time with the instructor, but really seeing all these different people and meeting all these different people. And that's going to be huge. That is one super awesome take from any seminar that is going to be just massively positive, is that get in there, socialize, meet people, talk with them. Some people might be a little bit more abrasive, or there's just different personalities, and maybe you'll click with some and not with others. But I think in general, whether there's personalities you like or don't, realistically everyone's there for the same reason, which is a positive thing. And you're sharing that moment, that space with people who are compassionate about the same thing that you are at that point. And don't worry that you don't get everything. It's not designed for you to get everything. And opportunities will be there again. If you miss something or you don't get something, and a lot of times that's why I think we talked about and encouraged the community here, because you will meet people that you can ask, and the instructor will be back around. Or a lot of times these instructors that are doing these things have a home base, and you can go see them at that home base, or they'll be back around, or some of their people that are certified by them are around you locally, and you'll be able to go pick up the information. So, all in all, it's just a super positive thing. Take your best face in there and just enjoy the time.
I think to add to that, people who have something that we haven't touched on is people who want to go and have questions about going, that have reservations or scared. Just do it.
Just go. Yeah.
Just go. 10 years ago, my first seminar, I couldn't have fathomed where it would have put me now, the community that I'm a part of, that I'm so grateful for, of the friendships that I've, gathered along the way, that taking that first step, right. Just with, as anything, when you're curious about something, just do it.
Yeah. So 100%.
What's going to come of it?
Yeah, I think every single one of us had some apprehension about stepping into a seminar. Yeah. So it's natural to have that apprehension. Mm-hmm. But, put that aside. People want you to be there. They want you to succeed. They want you to do well. All of them. No one's judging you on that level. So, get in there and do it.
There's not a single seminar that I regret going to, but I read a lot of the ones I skipped.
Yes. Yep.
That's how that thing plays out. And if you're there and you're nervous and one of the four of us is there, we're happy to help. Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I still get nervous. So,
So now it's a contest. Who gets the longest line? You, me, Yuskiw. Yeah. So is it going to be, who's going to have the longest line? Kurt, Michael Perez, Mike Yuskiw, me, or the Hatches?
The Hatches. Go to the hatches. Just don't tell them we sent you.
That's right.
I didn't say nothing.
Oh my God.
guys.
All right, guys. Love you
Thank
all. And thanks again for a great episode. And all you out there watching, if you've got some ideas for us to discuss as the Talking Heads, throw it in the comments, and we'll see what we can do. It's not that we're hurting for topics, but we do want to maybe talk about things that people are interested in hearing. So again, I'd like to thank all my Talking Heads here. We got Kurt, Mike, and Michael. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Hey, guys.
All right, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Later, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Talking Heads podcast presented by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. Support this program by hitting the subscription button on our YouTube channel, which is at Malmag7404. That's at MALMAG 7404. There you'll have access to all of the Malmag shows, including the Talking Heads podcast, the Martial Arts Lifestyle podcast, the Martial Arts Lifestyle Special Edition podcast, the Martial Arts Lifestyle Alumni podcast, and all future shows. Check out martialartslifestylemagazine.com to read articles on the martial arts. You can also check out what events are happening worldwide, see places to train, and even purchase courses on our courses page. You can also shop at the Malmag store, where you can find a variety of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Kirby Bong, as well as t-shirts and other items. Check out Kurt Cornwell of MKG Detroit and the martial arts he teaches at boomboxdet.com. That's BOOMBOXDET.com. You can also catch his YouTube channel at Coach_Kurt. That's at COACH_KURT. For information on Tim Becherer and the martial arts he teaches, check out DDTmartialarts.com. Links to these websites are provided below in the description, as well as where you can find all of the Talking Heads on their social media. Contact us at malmagonline@gmail.com if you would like to advertise or sponsor the Talking Heads podcast. Talking Heads theme performed by Arthur J. The Talking Heads podcast and Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.